Bryan, always great to see you. Thanks for joining me again today.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I see it.
So let's start off. Can you tell us why you decided to start Active Solutions and why did you think the gym design space was ripe for disruption?
Well, I've been in the gym design space, if you will, for my entire career. So I'm particularly passionate about it, and everything we do at Active really is about designing experience. There's the Active solution for us was something that was born out of necessity, right? They said mother of invention. We were designing so many spaces where a lot of the larger manufacturers, the traditional manufacturers, were very good at cardio and strength, but there were a lot of gaps in the fulfillment process, the process where you think about gym space and you think about, you think about any space, and everybody says there's just not enough storage. There's not enough room for, a lot of the movement-based categories that are so popular today. So, yeah, we really thought there were several gaps: storage, suspension training, boxing, aerial yoga. My wife is actually a fitness enthusiast. She teaches aerial yoga, and there was just no smarter, safe componentry to really facilitate that in commercial spaces without a lot of customization. So yeah, we jumped right in, and we haven't slowed down since.
Would you say, or how has your approach to design and equipment, changed since you launched the company in 2015?
Well, we're very careful about what we bring to market. If we're not adding value, if we're not creating something to make a difference, we're not going to do it. So, unfortunately, like in any industry, there's a lot of Me Too product in our business. But for us, we felt like if we can make a difference in safety, function, footprint, things of that nature, all those things really matter to operators. So yeah, we're about optimizing, the commercial environment, the home gym environment as well, but the commercial environment around whatever our client's constituency demands. Yeah.
I feel like the fitness industry is a very I want to be careful how I say this, very trend heavy. And so, how do you design a facility that harnesses the workout trends of today, but also remain versatile enough so that they could pivot and account for future changes in consumer taste? Because now it's strength, it'll be something else, it'll be something else, it'll be something else.
Yeah, it's very trend based. A lot of operators, run to the trend. Some do it better than others. But like any emerging industry, the fitness business is evolving. It's consistently changing, and so I think one of the biggest challenges is that operators sometimes try to overbuy or buy too much equipment and are trying to sort of chase that trend versus keep that flexibility in their floor planning and create spaces where, both in terms of what may come in the future, but also just variety and being able to mix modalities and do that. So I would say, really making sure that space preservation and optimization is the number one focus.
I guess as a follow up to that, there's only so many square footage everyone has to work with, right? And it's no secret, a lot of the operators today are struggling. They need to generate more revenue. What additional modalities can they bring in? I mean, you and I talk a lot offline about recovery. Is this something that these studios and clubs can really monetize? How should they be incorporating these additional modalities and things into their businesses?
Well, I think balance is key, right? And not everything is so exercise based, as you said. It certainly could be recovery based, pre workout, post workout. All things that are more broadly wellness based, I think, are important. If you have built a facility and you're asking people to, in essence, be inconvenienced to come there to achieve, well-being, I think you've got to be diversified in what you're doing. So yeah, I think you have to look at new or emerging, health modalities, hot and cold treatment, certainly recovery, anything that, encompasses myofascial work, release. All of these things are important. But what's critical is that operators have to understand you can't just mix them all together, right? So design is so important in that equation, balancing the zones, high energy, low energy zones, creating a journey through your spaces, and one that ultimately, in context is really supportive of somebody's well-being. I think that's the key, So I think you've got to step outside of it, and it's difficult not to react to the trend base, right? But you have to think about what are your foundational tenets, what are those things, and how can you then constantly look for micro ways to fold new practices in that may be trend worthy, and but ultimately are wrapped around the consumer.
I know we have a lot of people in the audience and readers at Affletech that maybe they're responsible for the, building out the gym at their hotel, or they're in, residential real estate, and they got to build best in class facilities at the home, or, corporate wellness is becoming a very big trend. How has that changed over the past few years? You're going into to homes, you're going into office buildings. What are you putting in those footprints that maybe you didn't put in there 5, 10 years ago?
I call those are really the emerging markets. Those where exercise can be more convenient, right? Where we work, live, play. I really believe that's a lot of that is driven by the opportunity. It's actually an advantage. It used to be considered a disadvantage. Oh, we don't have as much space for our gym. Well, should we even do it? Can we be competitive? Yeah, absolutely. Because when you look at the larger boxes, ultimately, and you understand gym design and you understand what they're trying to facilitate, it's really for scale, right? So it's redundancy on a lot of equipment. So when you apply that to a smaller space, like an amenity, corporate wellness amenity, hospitality, what have you, I think you start to find clear advantages there. Those operators are, certainly their core competency is not fitness, but they're looking to take care of their constituency. And they have an easier opportunity in many respects to do that because they have a more tailored audience. So they already know more specifically who it is that's coming. And they, instead of having to be everything to everyone or attempting to be, smaller spaces oftentimes can be a lot more immersive, impactful. They still have to follow the same principles. You still got to have enough of the right mix. But I think some of the most progressive environments we're designing today are those amenitized type of facilities, which are really more tailored and specialized.
Are you getting a lot of phone calls from like hotels and residential complexes saying, "Hey, look, we want to modernize this. We want to put hot and cold in there. We gotta." Is that part of like is that what's you're hearing a lot on the phone?
Yeah. Clearly now, I think the understanding is that we can offer something that's compelling. We could perhaps offer an exercise component that, if we're a multifamily residential environment, that might give a resident the opportunity to consider, will they spend an extra $100 perhaps over at a health club 20 minutes down the street, or could the facility be enough? In fact, could it be every bit as good? And then there's also the pool, and there's also the community, right? And so these are some of the inherent advantages, but the awareness around what their constituencies, their customers, and in this case residents in multifamily, might understand better. In some cases they survey, they talk to their populations, and yeah, we've achieved some fantastic results, but they're asking a lot better questions, and they are open to modalities beyond simply exercise. Outdoor fitness, another emerging opportunity that, whether it's at a commercial health club or an amenitized space, is a really important opportunity to get outside the four walls.
I would love to be inside your brain when you walk into like a hotel, or you just walk into a facility. You're like, oh man, I wouldn't have done this. I should do this. I should do this. To that point, I mean, you probably see so many blueprints. What are the common design mistakes that you see people making over and over again, whether it's a client of yours or not, that you would advise against?
Yeah, I understand. We've been in this business for a long time, so we have a more discriminating eye. I think all exercise is not the same. We talked about zoning and energy balance, and how we might create, how we do seek to create a journey from a sense of arrival into spaces, and what hits you in the face. If you walk into a space and all of a sudden there's a CrossFit in front of you. That's probably, for at least a lot of people, might be a bit much. And so I think we need to talk about how we build these spaces, but more importantly, the mistakes that you mentioned we see too often are somebody perhaps doing Olympic type movement, something more aggressive with a barbell. Certainly strength training is fantastic, and the trends are, higher than ever in terms of awareness around the importance of that. But if I place those areas right next to what I consider a lower energy zone, a stretch and recovery space, what have you, that's not going to mix real well together, right? And even in smaller spaces, a bit of planning, a bit of design, and understanding that is one of the big things we see, where it's just there's sort of an inconsistency among either modalities and should they be paired together, and also when somebody we see sometimes you're backing into real estate, right, and you don't have the luxury of having one big space, or you're kind of chopped up on different floors. Just making sure that you understand how people train today, how people are looking to do, so that they don't have to go from one floor to the next floor in between sets, basic stuff like that. There's a lot of other ones. We see a lot of funny things on Instagram these days. But
what about one of my other media properties is focused on retail, and a common mistake in retail is you think if you just jam as much product onto the rack, well, if I have more shirts, I'm going to make more money. But it becomes a terrible consumer experience. I mean, unless you're in the treasure hunt business, but like more is not necessarily better. Do you see people today saying, okay, let me put every single machine, every single modality on the floor, and it almost becomes confusing to the member?
Well, less is more in fitness. Again, ideally we're creating spaces for movement, right? So equipment doesn't solve the issues, right? It can be, certainly it can be confusing, but we look at things like modality balance and functional occupancy. And if we're talking about functional occupancy, we're talking about the simultaneous use of anybody in the facility in movement, right? And so opening up those spaces actually can increase the amount of people you can service at one time. So beyond the confusing factor, it's just bad business if you're not optimizing your real estate, and if you're not looking for ways to let people settle into their spaces, right? And I think that goes back to making sure there's enough variety, there's enough of the small equipment-based components, the functional movement categories, things of that nature, so that there is a variety, but that you haven't tried to too heavily predefine the space.
So much of this video series is centered around, technology, digital disruption. How important are digital solutions to the modern facility design, and how should gyms be incorporating tech into their build-outs?
I think it's essential, and I'm a big proponent always of live coaching. We know that's expensive, and we know not everybody's the best coach, but if you're fortunate enough to have live coaching, great coaching, more power to you. A lot of times the economic model doesn't support that, and certainly not in the amenity environment. That's really difficult to solve for. So digital is an incredibly important category, because the one big thing that we need more than any one piece of equipment or what have you is guidance. And so many people are aware exercise is fantastic, I need it. How do I do it? And by the way, once I'm doing it, where does the variety come from? How do I keep adjusting based upon where I'm advancing or not, or just for, to alleviate boredom, right? And so digital gives every facility that opportunity to do that. Now, you can't just enable tech and go, here we go. You can get it on your phone. You've got to be purposeful. And I think now we're seeing an evolution of the integration of digital right where you need it most, when you need it. Those are smart areas that every facility needs to invest in, certainly in the amenitized spaces, to make sure that people actually can get the benefits out of the facility built.
I know you're very close to a lot of the equipment and technology companies. Like, I envision, I mean, is it here already, or is it in the blue? Like, is it people developing this? I envision a day where I walk into my Equinox and like the machine knows, facial recognition knows that I did biceps, this hammer curl 15 yesterday. Eddie, today do this. Tomorrow, like, You think that we're not so far off from, that experience?
I don't think we're that far off. We know the technology exists. It's just the execution, the integration into commercialized spaces. And I think really that's the next frontier. Again, we talk about delivering value both as a company for us, but for operators. And if you could walk into a space and your biometrics, right, are not just being recorded, but actually being utilized in terms of guiding you, right? We talked about the guidance component. So now we have a personalized opportunity if we can measure both biometrics as well as movement patterns. I think the movement patterns are critical, right? Because if you could go and do the exercise at whatever specific load or range you did, and then have the opportunity to get feedback and perhaps instant feedback saying, oh, you're weak, you have an imbalance on this side. Let's shift here. Let's do it. That's really actionable. And we know the technology exists. We haven't seen the execution yet. I'm very confident it's coming. We're looking at a variety of things out there that are very promising. But yeah, that to me is the gym of the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Aktiv has several partnerships with, whether it's Hyperice, Plunge, Free Motion. Why are these type of partnerships important part of Aktiv's business plan?
Because I think fortunately, no single manufacturer makes everything the best, right? We have seen a lot of homogenization, unfortunately, in our industry over time, and we get the fact that equipment companies or other folks want to broaden their reach and be one size fits all if they can. But in reality, there are specializations, and I think as our industry continues to mature, and as all other industries have, you see greater and greater specialization. And so for us, we know what we're really good at on the Aktiv solution side. We are fantastic at not just simply design, but storage and suspension and digital integration, things of this nature that we believe are essential components. But we don't manufacture cardiovascular equipment, and we certainly are not in the cold plunge, manufacturing side of things. But we know that those are essential components to this overall well-being equation. And so partnerships really matter, both in general in business and certainly for our opportunities. So yeah, you mentioned some great partners. Those are all very important partners for us. Exponential is another partner for us that really we believe collectively, the sum of the parts are greater, and that's exciting because at the end of the day, this is evolving, as you said. There's a trend base here. This is going to continue to evolve, and partnership and communication and strength in numbers and all those great sayings really matter in our industry today. So we're excited about that. We view ourselves as an open platform. That's really the idea. You look at your phone as an open platform. You want to be able to pull in things into your environment and what you want when you want it. And that's what we design for. We're really designing for spaces where we can bring best of breed in, depending upon, again, the constituency and their specialization. It's a fun time to be in the industry. We think the way we're approaching it.
Absolutely. There is no lack of passion. There's no lack of ideas. You walk the floor of FIBO, you walk the floor of Ursa. So many people are trying to bring new products to the market. You use the term gym of the future, when we talked about maybe what some of the equipment looks like in the not so distant future. But last question, if you had to predict, and you're probably already seeing blueprints and floor plans for the next 3 to 5 years, you're probably working on it now. What are those spaces going to look like in 3 to 5 years? Is it very different than today? Is there any big trends that our audience should be thinking about before they break ground? Obviously, they should be calling you before they break ground, but if they're breaking ground,
yeah. give us a call. Yeah, the earlier the better, by the way, because again, real estate is going to be the most expensive aspect of any development, no matter what the sector we're talking about that might be inclined to add exercise or exercise componentry. I wouldn't say that this gym of the future looks very different per se. Equipment changes and morphs, and I think we've talked about some of the technology that should be integrated into these environments. I just think they have to be more purposeful. And we're seeing operators, obviously, you see everybody, different folks on different sides of the spectrum, and it might, smaller facilities, sometimes they may feel disadvantaged because they don't have the resource or whatever it is. But, you see some of the best progressions in those facilities and the jumps, they could be more nimble. So we see a lot of that. We see some of it in professional sports and some of the environments we're fortunate to collaborate in. There's a lot of good stuff coming. I don't think the gym changes so much because the human body isn't changing so much. You know, we still move and we still need the things we need to take care of ourselves. So we're going to need those things, but equipment's going to get fancier. There's going to be more technology, but hopefully we're going to see greater results-driven specialization. That's my big thing. You know, I see a lot of equipment and a lot of products out there, and it's great to bring out a new product at a lower price point than the last product and keep, you know, sort of taking cost out of things. You know, that can work for certain folks, but I don't think that necessarily is addressing the marketplace in a way that's going to advance the commercial operators' interests. I think you've really got to, you know, most people aren't inherently just excited about exercise. You know, exercise, you know, requires pain and discipline and some other things to get to a point where, you know, hopefully it becomes rewarding and pleasurable. And I think you got to put people on that path. So you got to inspire, facilities are going to need to inspire people to be on that path. So immersion, when you walk in, are you feeling like this is your trusted source, and was your time valuable when you were there? And if we can give people return on their time investment, I think operators are going to be doing well in the future.
Well, I hope you don't get tired, because I and my editors are certainly going to be asking you this question every year to see if there is ever a big change or a pivot in the response. But Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Always a pleasure. Always so much information to you share with the industry. So very grateful for your participation.
Thank you, Eddie. Great to speak with you. I look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely.